When I was in high school and was trying to decide what to do with my life, one theme became clear. I wanted to do something that would actively prevent climate change. The problem I had was figuring out exactly what that would be. I thought the reason that we even know that climate change is an issue at all is a result of scientific discoveries and research, so surely it must be helpful to be a scientist. While I think scientists continue to do amazing work that helps humans in often unexpected ways, I think when it comes to climate change, the bulk of the work that needs to be done is social. However, when I was younger, that idea had not yet become clear to me. I thought to get a climate job, I should probably study environmental science. After I got my bachelor's, I ended up working in a state environmental protection agency. There, two things became clear to me. The word environmental obviously covers a lot of ground, so you can be talking about part of the environment and completely neglecting other parts. For that particular state institution, they were doing many great things for public health, like making sure people had access to safe drinking water, but they were not regulating the emission of greenhouse gases. To me, it felt completely insane that an organization that calls itself environmental would not be regulating greenhouse gases in the late 2010s, given that the greenhouse gas effect was first discovered in the late 1800s, and its impact on human civilization was modeled in detail starting in the late 1980s and continuing into the present. The second thing that became clear to me is that just working in climate or going along with the status quo won't solve the issues that we're facing. However, I did need to make a living, and I did have a degree in environmental science, so I had to figure out how to keep myself afloat. I remember listening to a comedy YouTuber at the time who liked to give life advice to his audience, and he said if you want to be hireable, you need a skill. I knew that if I wanted to do actual research in environmental science, I would need a PhD, and even with the PhD I may struggle to find work. Also, I found that the work that many scientists were doing wasn't really having any additional impact in terms of preventing climate change at a global scale. So I decided that the skill I would learn would be programming, and that I would aim to work in climate tech. I was able to switch careers, and I can talk about that in a separate video, but next I want to talk about another paradigm shift that I had while working at a climate tech company. I think I shared a post about effective altruism podcast or something along those lines, and a coworker who had previously worked for a state institution, but at a very high rank, said that he didn't really believe in the private sector's ability to solve climate change. Previously, I had been optimistic about startups in particular, since they often break into industries and bring new ideas into the business landscape, but his point was that ultimately climate change is a global issue that requires a global response, and that producing a global response is only possible via policy. Even if you can get some companies to make net zero pledges or to become more efficient, relying on individual companies and hoping that others will follow suit is simply too slow and too inefficient of a strategy to face the rapidly warming climate that is a result of burning of oil and natural gas. That, and as I mentioned in my previous video, capitalism only incentivizes businesses that are profitable. Unfortunately for us, the oil and gas industry is extremely profitable for the existing actors in that space, and for them to transition to renewables would be at least a temporary decrease in their profits, something their shareholders will never agree to with their capitalist logic of placing profit above all else. In another video, I'll address why it is so profitable for oil and gas companies to continue their status quo and not to invest in renewables themselves. So ultimately, this is why I think climate tech isn't that cool. There are a lot of amazing technologies being developed at climate tech companies, but the existing system, even with the best of climate tech companies, will never solve the core issue causing global warming, which is to actually decrease greenhouse gas emissions at a global scale. This can only be solved by having limits on how much greenhouse gases companies can emit, in other words, putting a price on carbon pollution. Would I still work at a climate tech company myself? Sure. I think it's great to be surrounded by people who care about the environment and to be working on a small part of the puzzle. I just wanted to walk through my thinking about climate tech in general, and how I came to the realization that it wasn't the panacea I had hoped it might be.